There we go. Hey, people.
Hi.
No, I don't want. Yes, hello.
All right. Okay. We're doing the thing. Oh my goodness. All right.
I'm on the wrong side because every time I look to my other screen, I'm looking away from you guys. So we'll have to remember that for next time.
It's true.
Yeah,
for today, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
It'll be all right.
It's gonna be fine.
I swear, I like
this.
that Wolfman Jack. I wish I knew some of his lines, but he was an awesome DJ. I feel like I talk like him right now.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, it's way before. I mean, I was a young dude when he was popular. But it was back when radio was a real thing, and actually DJs were real. That, but... I know, right? Well, you know, it's still pretty awesome, but it's like it's not the same for sure because a lot of stuff is programmed and pre-recorded and this kind of thing. But in the day, it used to be an actual person in a studio switching things and talking to the audience and whatever, and Wolfman Jack is just this kind of famous. He's been in a couple movies and little things like that, or TV shows and whatever, as like guest appearances and sort. But anyway, he had this really raspy, cool voice. So yeah, that's how I feel tonight. Because this is certainly not how I normally talk.
Nice.
Thanks for that comment, McClunky.
Obviously,
exactly.
Obviously, people are going to stay for the radio hot takes, but never. Why'd they show up? What's the show?
So, hi, welcome to TabletopGalaxy. For the very first time, this is going to be like the chillest episode ever because I'm very sick. Gregory lost his voice. Wait, hang on. Yes, Gregory's over here.
Yeah.
Sweet. I can do this. Yeah, so it's
I'm here too.
Rob's doing great.
I'm doing great. I'm thriving.
Rob's awesome.
Whoa, let's not go too far.
So, yeah, this is just kind of going to be a place where we get to, like, hang out and talk about the games that we've been running in Rob's case or playing in Gregory and I's case. So, yeah. I wanted to start with something that Rob and Gregory don't actually know about because earlier today, shout out to Neophet or Jay, who plays Vans on Halcyon Days, because he sent me this whole spreadsheet of, hey, I collected stats for you.
What?
Yeah, on like who got the most triumphs and despairs and like kill counts and stuff. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, we have stats.
We have Tabletop Galaxy stats.
We have Tabletop Galaxy stats.
This is there's a high level of quality content that you came here for, folks.
This is amazing.
So shout out to Neophet. Like, honestly, that was so great. It completely surprised me earlier today, but it was awesome. So
wow. Thanks, Jay.
All right, what we got?
So
I'm excited.
Well, first of all, I really liked the comparison between our two groups because Second Sunrise, when we rolled for Destiny points, we got 2 light side and 3 dark, and our second episode was 2 light side and 4 dark.
Yep.
But then for Halcyon Days, they got 6 light sides in their first episode.
Yeah, they did.
So thanks. That made me feel very inadequate as a player on Second Sunrise. But yeah, I want to hear some of your guesses on like kill counts and stuff.
Oh
like,
gosh.
Who do you think has killed the most people?
I think it's Nick.
No, it's... go ahead. From Second Sunrise.
From Second Sunrise, at 100% is Nick, but between the two crews...
No, it's gotta be Vans. It's gotta be Vans from Halcyon Days. He's just stupidly good at combat.
Yeah, so we... Kane, played by
yes,
Nick,
sorry, I should have said King.
It's all good. He did have 4 kills, and they're like time-stamped and everything. I'll see if I can put this up somewhere.
Crazy.
Vosk and Zarko each had 1, and Ellie had 0.
Good.
That's the way it should be.
On brand, right?
Vosk is marked as 1 miss, so maybe, I don't know. I didn't get to chat really well with Jay on like all the meanings of his notes and stuff, but we're gonna clarify it and make it cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, so yeah, Ellie's trailing behind. And then this is the not complete record. He only got through the first part of one of the things, but Bishop had 4 and Vance had 4 already.
Wow.
And then here's a note of also 2 hands blasted off. So
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Halcyon
I think
Days
that counts.
been getting real into the thick of it.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with them. So yeah, there's a couple of different stats of like who's rolled the most triumphs and who's rolled the most despairs. Is a really cool thing. I'm very excited.
Amazing.
That's gonna be fun to check out as we keep
cool.
It's gonna be so fun.
That's
and
cool.
Guess who's taking the most damage? No.
I would love to know. I think it's Vosk.
Well, Voss
unfortunately
did take damage in our crew, but Zale got a critical on her.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about that.
She got hit real hard.
Zale got big oof.
Yes.
So Zale wins that one.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we have like stats tracked and everything. That's my big announcement for tonight.
That's crazy.
We're cooler than I thought.
I mean, obviously.
But yeah. So now that we've got that out of the way, we can kind of get to actually like talking about stuff. Gregory, you said beforehand that you wanted to bring something up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, if you have an agenda, by all means, we can definitely go along that. But I have a question I mean, again, we decided we would do this as a adjunct to our games where we're talking about what happened in the games, like we just have started with our stats and that kind of thing. We talk about some of the, what we like, what we don't like, or any of that. But then we're also going to talk about game mechanics. And the other thing we also said we would do is sort of just generally geek out about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be real fun I wanted to ask you two what, I'm not even sure the right way to pose the question, but it's essentially, how did you get started with Star Wars? Like what got you into Star Wars?
An origin story, if you
Pretty
will.
much, yeah, something like that. And then I'll share mine too, because
one fateful day, a young Rob was sat down by his parents, and they were like, "We're gonna watch Star Wars," and I was like, "What's that?" And they were like, "Just wait." And then they were like, "Okay, chronological or correct order?" And then they did correct orders: 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Well, actually, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. I got paused on episode 3 until I was a bit older. But
side note, that needs to be a question for every guest: is what's the correct viewing order?
He just said it.
Yeah,
I mean, from their perspective,
right?
From my perspective, anywho. But yeah, so it was very much so like a family thing with like watching it all together.
that's awesome.
That's great. Do you have an idea like how old you were?
I believe it was probably like I was pretty young. Like I want to say around like 5 or so, maybe a little older.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Niff?
Raz in the chat says correct viewing order is 4, 5, 6, then Solo.
Or Rogue One. I mean, Rogue One was pretty righteous too.
Rogue One was great.
Yeah.
I don't remember life without Star Wars. Like I don't remember ever getting introduced. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is.
It's just always been a thing. Yeah.
This is a good movie. But what I do remember, like legitimately, some of my earliest memories from elementary school were me and my best friend running around in the playground, and we pretended to be Star Wars characters all during recess. Like we did it for solid like a year. And so it was.
I remember that. Yeah.
What characters? Just like your own invention, or were you like characters from the movies, or both?
It was the biggest act of self-insert fanfic ever.
Nice.
Because she was Luke and Leia's little sister, and I was Han Solo's little sister, and we did like a second generation, like our own adventures. It was.
I
great.
love that.
So excellent.
Yeah. So
I have a similar.
That's my kid's story.
Right.
Now I'm just imagining like Han Solo piloting the Millennium Falcon, and then a little girl walking up behind and be like, "Mom says it's my turn to pilot the ship."
That would be awesome. Yeah, I similarly feel the same way. Like I I kind of do, but I almost don't know like life without Star Wars. I have very early. I'm one of those weirdos that has like super early memories of like when I was like 2 years old, and of course I was born in '74. So Star Wars came out when I was basically like 4 years old or something. So I honestly, I know my folks took me to see Star Wars. I really only remember seeing Empire Strikes Back. Like that's for me, that's when it like clicked and really kind of came into like, oh yeah, okay. And so I do remember being like hiding in the movie theater because it was Darth Vader is terrifying, you know? I mean, he like one of the best villains of all time, without question, in my opinion. And so yeah, so I was real young and got exposed to it, and then growing up in the late 70s, 80s, it's like that was just our thing. Like everybody was into Star Wars. It was, if you were a young kid, it was hard not to be. And then we had this huge gap. And I was in LA when episode 1 was released. So I went to see it opening night in the Grauman Chinese Theater. Like that was epic. Like seeing it, like, it wasn't the very first showing, but it was like the first day. There were people dressed in cosplay, which blew my mind. It was just like, it was such a big event after all these years of like, when is Lucas going to do it? When is Lucas going to do it? Because there was this sort of chatter amongst geeks like me and others that were like, oh, he actually wrote this whole big epic, you know, a space opera, but they've only released these 3. There's more before and there's more after. It was like for years that was what everybody said, but everybody was like, yeah, sure, never gonna happen. And then here we go, and it comes out. It was like 20 years later. It was a phenomenal. So now to be here, we are again another 10 years later, and and being in this moment of, is it 10 or is it 20 again? It was 99, 09, 19. So yeah, another 20 years later, right? Yeah, I keep the math in my head. Here we are where like, see, I played role-playing games from a real young age, but Star Wars, for whatever reason, I never played a Star Wars RPG. Like, I had heard about them, I had seen the boxes and stuff, but it was like, nobody I knew played them, and I just never felt the impetus to get into it until I got it when you and I, Rob, first played. I'm going the wrong way because Rob, you're over there. When you and I played the first time with Genesis, actually no, it was all 3 of us that played Genesis, right?
Yeah.
When we played Genesis, and I got a taste of the Fantasy Flight game system and the dice, I was just all in. And I had played. Someone introduced me to Edge of the Empire, but until we played with Seal, I still think I didn't really get it. Like, it was like, oh, it was cool. We're playing Star Wars, and I kind of liked it. But then when we went through our game, like, everything kind of snapped together for me of like, oh, this is how you play this game. So
that kind of segues kind of nicely into some of the questions that I had on the docket for today, which was kind of like, with this whole new system that we all kind of are learning as we go in front of everyone, like, what is kind of like the most memorable thing from both a like GM and PC perspective of like, oh, I did it wrong, shoot. GM.
Okay, so what is the most
PC perspective? What's like the most memorable thing that you've come across, or like the easiest thing about picking up this new system, the hardest thing, or like all 3? Like,
yeah. Okay. So for me, from a GM's perspective, one thing that balancing encounters is a whole nother thing, but in terms of approaching new system, because I read like role-playing game systems a lot, and one thing that's very nice about this system is that there's not like all this number balancing, right? Like, I've recently been looking at like Pathfinder 2nd edition and like, you know, just thinking about like difficulty classes, right? Of like in D&D 5e, like a DC 10 is pretty average, and then DC 15 is pretty difficult, and DC 20 is very difficult, right? Until you get into really high levels. And that's like a number in my head that I can conceptualize. But in any new system you come in, that number changes, and it can change wildly depending on what kind of dice it uses and what kind of scaling it uses. But this system, you know, it's all just dice. So I don't have to worry about, okay, this DC is going to be, is this going to be easy, hard, challenging, daunting, like near impossible? Like there's like 5 options for my DC as opposed to any number between 8 and 25, right? It's just, yeah, that's probably going to be 2 dice or 3 dice. And then after that, it's just adding on stuff that makes sense in the narrative. So that, in terms of approaching it as a new GM, has been really, really easy and pretty cool.
Sweet. The thing that I think got me hooked is, again, when we were playing, when I really kind of conceptualized that the dice pools, you know, counteract each other, and that there's sort of like the fail success hard line that we have in like Dungeons and Dragons and other games that are strictly in numbered dice. That was the biggest kind of like aha for me, like, oh wow, there's so, it just felt like it felt like this gave us so much freedom. And even more so, it's like it felt like it gave us permission. Like if you roll failures, it's perfectly acceptable for the players to explain how we fail as it is the DM GM. That's super cool. I've actually started incorporating that into my D&D games of like, hey, how do you know, I just realized I'm wearing a D&D shirt instead of, that's because my 300 videos today. I should have switched to a Star Wars shirt. I wasn't thinking. but yeah, so that it's just revolutionized role-playing for me entirely. You know, like the fact that like engaging the players to describe how they succeed and how they fail, rather than it always being on the GM/DM, that's powerful and fun.
Yeah. That's kind of like my exact thoughts too. Is like the narrative dice system is like really complex at first if you like don't know about it. But then once you actually like sit down and like, okay, I'm gonna learn how this works, then it's like, this is so much more adaptive. It fits a lot more needs of like people who want to feel like there are pros and cons of things and stuff. So like, I don't know. I like the narrative dice a lot too.
It maintains the balance of like there being that randomness, right? Because you're rolling dice. There's chance, but at the same time, it's giving us those hooks and the like results that are so different than just standard numbered dice.
And at the same time, like life's not always black and white, and I think that a dice pool reflects that a lot better than just a single roll. Even out of combat, it's like, well, you know, checks for lock picking, you pass or you fail. But here it's like, oh, checks for like getting through doors or whatever, you fail, but you get certain information or stuff.
And also for me, right, going into with the whole past success advantage threat elevates it from all of a sudden, I know, like as my fighter, I know I have like a 66% chance to hit every time, because I know we figured out their armor class. I know my attack roll to hit. I know 66% of the time I'm going to succeed. 33% of the time I'm going to fail. Whereas while you can like actually figure out the math of the dice to a certain degree, there's so much more like it feels like anything can happen at all times, because you can't quantify it, like the randomness quite so easily, because there's 2 different metrics. Like you can quantify how easily you'll succeed, but that doesn't take into account triumph and despair and threat and advantage, right?
How much does that concern you, that there's just so many possibilities, like as a GM?
No, I love it because it means that all of a sudden, like failing, but in a positive way, or succeeding, but like having to pay for it, isn't just something that I have to like narratively, because that's something I try and narratively add into D&D anyway, right? Of like, you know, I've been known to be like, yeah, listen, if you want to really crit this guy, like you want to really lean into it, I'll let you do that, and they get a bonus to hit on you or damage to you. Like I want to like encourage people to take risks take risks and like, take a penalty and just eke their score up so they pass that DC, right? And this system will just lets me do it without having to homebrew any rules or like add anything into it. It's really cool.
Good.
Are you looking forward to trying it out as a player as well? I mean, that seems sort of like a silly question, but I'm curious.
Yeah, while GMing is always going to be my love, I am interested in like playing a long-term character, if only because this system, more than any other system, intimidates me in character creation, just because there's so many different avenues. And when I make a character in other systems, I can more easily quantify, like, if I put like this much into it, I should be pretty good at that. Whereas in this system, it's like, I don't know. Like, as a GM, the nebulousness of it allows me like narrative freedom and to let my players like get creative and collaborate with me. But as a player, I'm like, I just don't know if I can succeed at the things, even if I make my character good at it, which is a weird way to look at it, I feel like. But it's just like, as a GM, I love that I'll never know. But as a player, I'm like, how good do I need to make my guy at shooting to be a good shooter? Like, I don't know.
Quick on the spot, if you had to be a PC right now, which career would you go with?
I do have that picked. It would actually be one of the mechanic classes, because there's some really cool stuff where you can just like say like, oh, that's broken, or oh, I have this little device that should help us with this kind of thing. Like, I really love those abilities that let you just kind of like pull little narrative things out of your pocket.
Zarko's going to get into that. If we continue and he gets up through all of his tiers, he gets to the one where it's like the utility belt or some, whatever it is. Like, I love it. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, what are... Rob, go.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I love the ability to just like be that guy, right? Who like got that little thing that just, of course we needed glue. Why didn't we think of bringing glue? If only because that means I know I'll be good, no matter how poorly I allocated my skill points.
Yeah. Gregory, kind of going off of that, where do you see your character going? Like, do you want to keep going on your build, or do you want to branch out to other career class trees?
Oh, that's a fun question. So yeah, because I mean, our first game, like, I was already totally surprised by what Zarko sort of came across as. Like, I had this intention beforehand, thought I understood what he was out, but as soon as I started, like, jumped into the character and we started role playing and the situation started coming up, I realized, like, wow, this dude's like a lot more aggro than I intended to be at all. Like, I did not think of him as being this, like, but it makes sense. He's a scout, right? So it's like, so I was thinking, like, he would be the guy in the front. He would be the one that wants to act first. Like, he's trained himself. Like, he's got to be able to make these decisions right away, because he has no idea what he's going to be getting into if he's out there in front of everybody else. And that really surprised me. So with that in mind, I love the quick draw, and I felt like
that was big for you.
It was huge. It was super fun to do, and it was so effective. And I feel like I want to stay in the scout tree as long as possible, and like I said, get to that utility belt. At the same time, it's gonna be difficult not to try to find maybe some more gunslingery kind of, like, I would like 2 blasters might be super fun, or something that gives me that little kick to combat. But I don't know. I haven't decided. I do like the mechanic stuff, but Vosk has totally got it on lockdown. So there's just like so the meta Gregory. When I think meta, I want to put some energy into medic stuff, because I feel like
really, really helpful.
Yeah, and again, with Vosk is got the talent or got the skill he's got the ability, but like none of us really have that much skill for that, so it'd be fun to have someone push a little into who does all the bandaging in the group.
That'd probably be good. Although after Zarko's first interaction attempting a medicine check, maybe not.
Hey, it worked. It just
I'm seeing in chat that Friendly UAV asked if there is a force sensitive showing up. And it kind of already got answered that Zale in Halcyon Days is force sensitive, but also in the discussion of the future, Ellie is also force sensitive. And so kind of from a meta perspective, I had already talked with Steven, the GM for Second Sunrise, about like buying different talent tree skills, and I was going to get a couple from the force sensitive tables. And so that's going to be the thing that happens next. And we kind of talked about like how would that emerge, and in kind of the situation where the crew of the Second Sunrise is right now, we were just like, if any time there were a stressful situation for force abilities to manifest, it would be right now. So
super stressed.
That's kind of a little heads up for everybody watching that Ellie is gonna start using the force too.
That's very tempting for me again as well, because it's Star Wars. Why wouldn't you use the force? And at the same time, I'm kind of on the like I still haven't spent my experience from our first session. So
Neither
I'm sort of
have
like, so I'm like thinking, and DM Steven has asked us to be ready so that probably midway through this next session we might do that. So I'm still like, but I think I'm, especially now that we're talking about it, I think I'm pretty committed to staying the course with Scout and seeing where that goes. Like try to stay focused into that talent tree to see where it goes, because I think I could have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I don't see going like full Jedi. Otherwise, I probably would have like picked the force sensitive like career.
Sure.
But like some of them I feel like would be useful. Like there's the force sense table is what I'm going to be buying at least one off of.
Nice. It's okay. Uh-oh. We knew this might happen.
Sorry, I'm really sick and I'm pushing through, everybody.
You're doing awesome. And then I go and blow my voice out screaming at the soccer game today. So
we're doing great.
It's all good. We'll still have fun. Great.
Rob, quick talk while both of us are.
So actually, one thing I was going to say is that it has been really cool looking at everyone's different builds and how the parties have kind of come about, right? Like Second Sunrise has become much more of like a exploration, like frontier hopping crew than I think Steve and I initially planned for. Like we have behind the screens a little bit like Second Sunrise and Halcyon Days were originally going to be in the same spots, like kind of hopping along the same areas, but now it's kind of diverged because Halcyon Days is very much a lot more combat focused, like a little more social encounter with people as opposed to like exploring and like dealing with creatures and stuff. And so like all of a sudden now these paths are more different, which is super cool to see. Like there's like all this variety and stuff, and it's been really interesting thinking about all that kind of stuff in terms of character development and like what everyone has come in like wanting to encounter. It's been really cool.
Take us behind the screen, Rob. How much have we messed up your plans already?
Not a ton.
Good. It's
been a little difficult, and Steve can back me up on this, making sure timelines don't get goofed up. So I will. This is a good chance to officially say that the stuff in the compound going on in Second Sunrise is canonically happening after the stuff that's already happened in Halcyon Days. So Halcyon Days, little interactions within the compound happened before everything that's about to go down on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So just for anyone who's trying to keep the stuff in their head, like myself and Steven, that's a little behind the scenes, just a fun thing.
It's this Wednesday's gonna be
tense.
I mean, yeah,
crazy.
We didn't split the party one way, like with two groups. We have.
I am so ashamed of us. We have already split right now. I'm so ashamed.
Which is amazing. It's amazing. Like, no matter what happened. Like,
hang on, wait.
Yeah,
here it is.
Go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah, I know, right?
Finger for pose.
Even if it goes completely sideways and we all get hosed, I'm so happy with it.
Yeah, all of a sudden just becomes a normal campaign as all the Second Sunrise people just get blasted.
I've already had like 2 or 3 different conversations with Steven of like, look, I know the spot that you left me in, but please don't kill me. So we'll see how well those please work. Yeah. Oh, sorry. There was a question on Twitter that we had to answer because thanks, Seal.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was, what food does Ellie keep in the fridge of the Second Sunrise? Which, can I just point out, I really love just the weird details, at least that our crew has got on. Like, we just have a ton of fun behind the scenes, like not on stream, just establishing details that don't matter at all. Of like, you
Space
know,
puppies.
The space puppy that somehow ended up on the ship. Like, for people that don't know the story of the space puppy, when we were setting up the campaign, I at one point, as a joke, was like, Steven had asked, like, is there anything else that anybody needs as part of like equipment buying? And I just go, I want a puppy. And Steven is like, fine, as long as it stays on the ship and isn't used in combat. And so we just kept adding space puppies to the crew every time that we added anything. It was like, you know, we get this and also another space puppy.
Yeah.
So that's the story behind the space puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when she said she didn't know how it happened, by that she meant that she made it happen.
I made it
with
happen.
Things she says and does.
Yes. But yeah, so the what food does Ellie have in the fridge is just kind of another one of those, like, we really like making those weird non-essential details up.
Well, let's take it even back because when we first started about like, hey, we're gonna do a podcast. Okay, who are our crews? We've got the first crew set with the 4 of us and Steve and Steven, excuse me. And then we started like, well, okay, so one of the things we're gonna get to do is we're gonna get to have a ship, right? And like one of the first things that came up was like, okay, we need to make sure it has a decent kitchen.
Yeah.
Like that was absolute. Like we don't care about the layout. We don't care if we have to bunk together or whatever. All we want is to make sure there's a good
all of the layouts
kitchen.
that we sent to each other, there was never a kitchen.
Yes.
There was never anything, and it's like that doesn't make sense.
We live on the ship. We need something. Yeah, totally.
So I was,
Star Wars.
I was very upset at the lack of a kitchen, and so that became the focus of our ship hunt. Was like, okay, we need a kitchen.
Yeah, and
it was like House Hunters Space Edition.
Totally. I love the fact that we have these sort of like halcyon days, if I understand correctly, so please correct me if I'm off. As far as I understand, Halcyon Days ship is like pristine.
The best.
Like
Yes.
brand new, like fresh off the line.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like some rich Black Sun members, just fresh Maserati that just got swept out from under them.
And contrarily, our crew has a potentially slightly more valuable ship.
No, it's like even more valuable in that it's like a rare collector's
Right.
item.
Okay. There you go. It's this collectible. It's like a couple 1,000-year-old ship, which is still fun. So the thing about Star Wars is like that tech is still perfectly functional all this time. Like the tech hasn't really changed that much. But the thing is, it is that old, and it's probably changed hands like through different generations. So then we decided we would come up with this funny mechanic, right? Do you want to tell about that, Nif, or should I?
Yeah, no, that was like my favorite thing is we just started throwing out, again, like not really important to the plot information of like, oh yeah, this weird thing is wrong with the ship, of like, you know, the landing ramp doesn't go down, so you have to go jump on it, and Ellie's not heavy enough to open it, or stuff like that. My favorite one that I don't know if it will ever come up because we roll on a table at the beginning of every episode for us, is that there is a like takeout restaurant number scrawled into the like dashboard on the ship. And so if you try and contact it, it's like this old restaurant that's been out of business for years. And so it just kind of speaks to like the character of the ship and like the oldness of it. So
much good stuff.
I love that feature though. It's just like we've found a way to make it so much personality.
I want to know how the Halcyon Days crew is going to handle the fact that they've put a hot item on their ship. Or at least as far as we know. Okay, we don't know. But when Vans left the ship in his uncle's hands, Uncle Dax, is it? I think, right? Or am I saying that? Uncle Rax. Sure. So Uncle Rax was in the process of souping up the ship with this like hot ticket item. I can't wait to see how and if, or whatever, if that comes back to bite them.
Yeah,
me too. I'm very excited.
Honestly, like ships with character are my favorite part.
Yeah,
like,
and I hope to. I think we'll probably end up fleshing out the Halcyon Days more, because I already on a whim added the like. It's not an AI, but it's just like a voice that greets you and like says goodbye to you as you enter and leave. So I'm excited to see what other random details start to come about of like, just I imagine, right, like they went to the dealership and there were like all these extras checked that you could check, like of that just really all it did is make the ship more expensive, and the person just clicked all of them, right? I
love that.
So it's got the like plushest seats, and it's got
the flame decals on the outside,
right? Indeed. Yeah, because also again, Neophet J painted a model to represent, and it doesn't look like Star Wars, like a typical Star Wars ship would. It's like it's weird to say, but it's like almost, it's like more sleeker and more futuristic than like some Star Wars stuff is. So like that immediately planted in my brain like, oh yeah, this guy is just like, this ship is like, it's not mechanically much better than a normal Lancer, but it has been like meticulously planned out. Well,
and also like it just looks better maintained and better cared for than most ships that you ever see in Star Wars. Like
Well, I love that. That kind of makes me think of like in episode 1, the Naboo starship was like the fact that it was chrome, like 100% chrome, was such a cool thing to see because of that. Exactly. The fact that it was so contrary to everything we had seen up to that point. It
was like,
the contrast.
Right? Yeah, you see all the other ships up to that point have been these sort of like buckets of bolts kind of feel. Even to some degree, like the TIE fighters and this things, it was like there was still this sort of like metallic feel to them. They didn't have that sort of sleek, slick, like, why wouldn't people that had lots of money invest in making it look like a race car or something? So that was super fun. So I dig that.
Yeah.
What I'm really curious, so maybe you can fill me in here. So Rob, I because I've seen the Halcyon Days episodes, enjoyed them. I'm a little unsure though, because you didn't come out right and say it. For us, I know how our obligation has played out, and I'm really curious if and how it has played out in Halcyon Days. Because I know you made the rolls, but it wasn't, for me at least, it wasn't exactly clear of like what situations arose that maybe were tied to the.
Well, the first episode session, the first 2 episodes, which is the first session, no obligation got rolled, so that was fun.
I forgot.
What's that like?
Nice feeling.
That was an interesting moment, and then just recently we had. Atmos Cast Force, played by Alex at Shock the Link.
Sup, Alex?
Obligation roll.
We see you in chat.
Yeah. So that it manifested into smaller ways so far in the previous session. I won't give away any spoilers, but as to whether that's it. But so the first way was more small, but I put in, because Atmos is a professional, right? It's all about doing things by his own personal code and professional. So I did have in that kind of first social encounter where they were trying to not give away to the Imperials that they got this cool tech thing of like the Imperial just kind of called on that reputation just to see if that would kind of get them, right? See if that would break them if they were like, well, hey, I know you're some kind of bounty hunter, professional guy. So if you tell me you didn't find this, alrighty then, right? And then later in the episode, somebody from their backstory came back up. That being the second command of one of their enemies on Socorro. So, you know,
I love a good character from the backstory arriving to screw up plans.
And that's the thing too, that I've loved about Halcyon Days is if you haven't been watching, first of all, spoiler alert, but also the main thing is that obviously the players all came to me with their backstories and they had NPCs in them. But in our session 0, everybody made NPCs on stream, completely off the cuff, that have almost all come into play so far. We had Uncle Rax was like in Jay's backstory, but was fleshed out in that session 0. The cousin of Zale has come up, the cyber surgeon, and then both the like Hut and their second in command have like come up, if only by name, in the session so far. It's been really fun to just have like the players just make up NPCs and help fill out this world. And for me to then
definitely loved that you did that. Like, that was really cool to watch. It was just like, oh man, you're just like putting stuff in there of like, okay, I know this person. Like, that was really cool and on the spot.
It makes,
so, like,
I love doing that kind of thing in any system because it not only makes it so the players don't have to turn to me and say, what do I know? Who do I know? Like, ask me questions. They can just feel like they're in the world. It makes it feel so much more live, and it makes you feel like these characters have actually been here, right?
Yeah.
Because if you make up a character who's lived in a city their whole life, and then you have to turn to the GM and say, what do I know about the castle?
Yeah.
You don't feel like you know, but if you help me make up the castle and you're like, oh, I know this castle has like an infamously hard to escape dungeon, because you help make up that dungeon, you and the rest of the table, all of a sudden you feel like you are from this city, which your character is, and which is so much more rewarding and leads to so much good role play, I feel like.
Yeah.
That actually
I feel like,
ties... Sorry, Niv, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like that's like another kind of much more adaptive response that this game has versus D&D. Like, I know so many D&D DMs that are like, okay, I gotta go world build, I gotta build 8 cities and have these NPCs in it, and it's like they have to do every single detail themselves. And I feel like it's a lot easier for a player to be like, all right, there's gonna be a person, which kind of segues into a question in chat that goes, would you play with me? I know a guy rule, which I remember that going around at first of like, or seeing a post or something where it's like, you can just randomly say like, okay, I have somebody for this exact situation, insert story, and like immediately have that in as an option and stuff. And so kind of thoughts is like, how do we feel about playing that in this game?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was directed at you, Rob.
If one of my players said, I want to do and I know a guy role, I'd be like, let's do it. Tell me about this guy right the heck now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the kind of thing I love.
If we had been rolling better on our destiny points,
yeah, really,
that's something I would have done without question already. It was like before we sat down for session 1, it was in my mind of like, oh, I can't wait for this to come up. And it just has. Yeah. We've had so few, we've had such crummy rolls with the destiny points. It's like, ooh, we better use those when they really count.
Yeah, that's kind of my biggest regret. It's just like we have very little to work with if we don't do good on rolls. Like, we don't have that resource to come back to and stuff, which would be really cool. And like the ones that we have had, we use them pretty well, I feel like. And so, yeah, just like, I don't know. I would love to have that put into play, the I know guy role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a GM, I'm also excited. Something I haven't been doing, but something I'm excited to start maybe doing is using my Destiny points for little incidental story.
I was
things.
wondering about
Yikes.
that.
That terrifies me, but go on.
Well, just because. So, for instance, my first interaction with this system is I have a beginner box for Age of Rebellion, and in it suggests that to flip a dark side point to a light side point, to have basically like the stormtroopers patrolling and turn around the corner as the party comes out, right? To like create that combat
Tension,
right? And saying it like says that you could like have them roll or just have it anyway, but that like doing this sets a precedent and like a way for you as a GM to like make things happen, right?
Yeah.
Also just having it like it almost takes away the railroading where like you don't have to just say and now this happens to you. You can like it like is mechanically in there. The players like have a way of dealing with it, and it like plays into the kind of aesthetic of like honestly people in the Age of the Empire just sometimes are very unlucky. Like these people are both extremely lucky and sometimes very not lucky. Like sometimes things just do not go their way, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of like flipping a Destiny point to have something not like not to make someone's check harder or to use whatever, but to like have something
set
narrative
that
Monkey
scene,
wrench.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, but can you imagine if Steven had like used a Destiny point to add even more stormtroopers to the compound? Because like,
Exactly.
big yikes.
That would be
Like, you know, have like Steven could be like, oh, and like flip a Destiny point and be like, oh, and woo, this is bad news for you, but a Lambda shuttle just dropped in because there's like a routine inspection and there's like 4 more stormtroopers and a like high-ranking officer that just got in the compound, right? Like, stuff like that, you know. I'm excited.
I want that stuff though. That's like to me, like the
Okay,
higher
but
the
stop.
tension, the better.
But stop now, because like I don't need Steven watching this and finding like, yeah, I'll use a Destiny point to put a guy, you know, smoking a cigarette on the roof when they
we
get
haven't
up there.
noticed. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get up
Ellie.
on the roof to get you out, and there's like, oh, I forgot to mention there's a sniper up there, so you better watch out.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
Oh God, yeah. Don't give him any ideas. But it can go both ways.
This is how I
that's
feel
why it's
about that.
Right.
And I'm also excited to have players like again, spoilers. Listen, if you have not watched
This
Days
show
and
kind
Second
of a
Sunrise,
spoiler.
That needs
It's
to be our
all
opening,
spoilers.
right? That
Yeah,
needs
we
to
should
be our
really open
opening.
with
like,
that.
hey, welcome
But-
to the show. Guess what? It's all spoilers.
Guess what? We're talking about the shows. So.
right? But like when Jay asked if he could flip a Destiny point to have there be a thermal detonator for him to shoot to blow up the hut, I was very like, I love that kind of thing. Like
You
both
love
as a
saying
player
yes
and a
to
GM.
people.
I
Yeah.
do. I like saying yes. It's more fun to say yes as the GM, no matter what. Especially
It's
because
true.
I also immediately thought like, there's nothing that says that they also won't get exploded by this, or they won't also blow up the like skiff they're in. Now,
Yeah.
he rolled insanely
He
well.
rolled super
and
well, yeah.
pulled it off
I'm impressed.
immaculately, which was also just so cool. Like it was just it was like a character defining, like amazing stunt, and that's just what happens when you say yes. If I can give any advice out there, just say yes, people, and just
say yes.
live with the consequences, both good and
I
bad.
legitimately was
Seize the
thinking
day.
when Jay asked that, Neofet asked that, I literally, which is he's playing Vans. When Vans was like, "Hey, by the way, can I try this?" I was like, "Oh dear." This is either gonna go this is either gonna be super cool or go horribly wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
But like that's what makes it fun.
If any one of the players got hit by like even just the like blast, the,
Yeah.
like aftershock of the thermal detonator, they're almost dead. Like they're almost down immediately. You know, like that. Thermal detonators are nasty,
They're no
as
joke.
displayed in episode 2 of The Hellsame Days. Go watch it again if you wanna. Just kidding. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
So I just like the ability for people to feel comfortable to like add things on the fly and just add elements in the story, right? Because at the end of the day, we're just telling a story together with these rules to, you know, simulate chaos and randomness and chance and to add stakes, right? So the ability for players to feel like, oh, I can add this NPC, which will make the narrative more interesting or move it forward, or I can do something that will become this interesting element, right? In D&D, it almost kind of sometimes can feel like you can't quite do that because it's a little more rigid, right? There's stricter rules about like what things mean, and also I think part of it is just kind of the genre and the kind of, how do I explain this? Like when you sit down to a game of D&D, there's like a social contract where it's like, we are the players, we make our people and some people connected to us, and then you, the GM, make everything else, and you run us through like that. Whereas in Star Wars, it's kind of, there's so much already made that I, like, as a GM, you don't have to necessarily make up any setting stuff. You just kind of have to make a story, and that means that you, like, for instance, I haven't made up very many NPCs yet, right? Like, I made up Kai Zet, I made up a few other people.
Rip, by the way. Pretty sure he's gonna be dead soon.
Who knows? That's the thing. I don't know. It's great. I love that, right? Like, I most of the people that the party has encountered that aren't just like bad guy have been player made, which is so cool. It invests them more and it makes them care more.
Yeah, but also like it's really easy to like take the risks with it because it's like there's such a high chance for like fun reward and like good.
Like you can roll just blanks on all your negative dice and just knock everything out of the water.
It's true. You could kill like all the minions at once.
Yeah.
You could literally stare someone to death because you intimidated them so bad.
We definitely need to do part 2 for that.
Oh, yes, we do. So another good question in chat. Rob, how willing are you to pull the trigger on your players? And players, are you prepared for a death in the party?
Oof.
I mean, if by pull the trigger, I'm assuming they mean just like the heavy consequences of what's going on. I mean, I want it to feel earned. So if it's, because especially since I'm new at the system, I don't want it to feel like, oh, I did not properly balance this encounter. It was going to be way too hard for the party to win. You're all dead. But if it's the kind of thing where they shot a thermal detonator and it blew up in the party's face, then that's more the kind of thing that I'm not going to be leaning about, right? Where it's like, if it's consequences of my actions, I tend to be more lenient on like, okay, yeah, you know what? Let me like rethink this person's motivation about why they may not be going lethal right this moment, or like think about these kind of things. Whereas if it's player actions, if I'm too lenient, then it feels like players' actions don't have consequences, and that's something you never want in a role-playing game. So if it's my actions, I can be pretty lenient. But if it's player actions, especially because I want to play it more by the book, so that because that benefits both sides usually, because that way we know what's going to happen when X and Y happens. So generally that's my philosophy in any system.
Yeah, I will say, like, again, like, this is a conversation that I've had with Steven, our GM, already, of like, if Ellie dies, whatever, because like I don't know what he is planning, and that terrifies me. Like, literally how the last session left off was alarm bells are ringing, everyone's running towards the building, and you're heading towards the roof. And so like I am so terrified that I know that it's going to end in a shootout. And so I legitimately already have a backup character, like, and I'm starting to build them because I just talked to Steven of like, what do I do if she dies? What do I do? What do I do? And he's like, you know what? It's easy for you to go unconscious. It's not as easy for you to die, but there are still going to be consequences. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm buckling in. So yeah, I'm very prepared for Ellie to die, but I really appreciate Nick saying in chat, if Ellie dies, we riot.
We'll all be like, oh no.
That was Alex.
Everyone will be like, oh no.
Yeah, that was Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Saying the wrong name, maybe.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this.
Well, we appreciate them both.
Yeah, indeed.
It's true.
There was another more silly kind of question we could answer is
No. First, are you prepared for death?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I should do that. Okay. So, that's a really great question to ask. And the truth is, as a player, I have absolutely no problem with it. As when I'm running the game, it is the worst thing I have to think about. Like I made horrible mistakes, same like what you just said, Rob. I made a bad mistake. I made a bad call because of lack of experience in running a game. This was in D&D, but it's still there's still a parallel. I made a mistake and put like unfair and unreasonable sort of odds against the players.
Right.
And it could have caused a TPK. The cool thing was we're all adults, we're all mature enough to realize what was going down and then discuss like, well, what would be a fun out? What would be an interesting way to shift the story so that's not how it happens? And we did that. And it was great. I mean, I'm really happy about how that went forward. That being said, my other game that I'm running, they're almost in the same space of like, oh my God, I don't think they know what they're getting into. And this is, again, a potential of like, not one, but like all of the parties could just get wiped. As a DM, it stresses me out. As a player, if I rush into a situation like a dummy and just do something foolish, I am so okay. I've had characters die. It stunk. And at the same time, I'm like, I was a rogue and I went off by myself. Why did I do that?
Yep.
Tale as old as time.
I feel like literally everyone has that story of like, I was a rogue and I went off by myself and I died. I feel like everyone has that.
Yeah.
You know?
And the cool thing too, so it's different. In Star Wars, it's a little more permanent. Like in Star Wars, like if you're dead, you're dead. And you got to roll up a new character. Whereas with Dungeons and Dragons, there's like magic and resurrection and this kind of stuff. You know? So I think I'm a little more now that we're sort of talking this out in the moment, I really don't want Zarko to die because I really like Zarko a lot.
No,
Like, I really don't want Ellie to die at all, but I'm also like, oh, I think I'm in such a bad spot. Like, it could be me overreacting, and maybe it'll be okay on Wednesday, but
we'll figure something out.
Something will happen.
You know, you can always surrender.
I mean, that's kind of my plan right now.
Yeah,
because we got a Duros in a bar somewhere that will maybe be able to help eventually.
Yeah, and actually Nick just made a funny joke, but asked also a legit question. He said, well, what if Kane dies? And that's actually a really interesting thing to consider because truthfully, I would probably have a harder time. Gregory, as a person, I would have a harder time probably dealing with one of the other players' characters dying, and then I would enjoy role-playing that, but it would be harder for me to deal with one of the other players losing their character than me, because I'm just like, yeah, okay, it's just another character. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like, we are so collaborative with, like, helping each other develop our characters, and I would be like, you know, I let you guys down if, like, you guys got offed, you know? I would be real sad about that. And I would also have to actually be sad in game because, like, you know, I went and developed feelings about you guys and, like, actually care and stuff.
Can we go back to one of the earlier questions? And absolutely, Niv, I'm sorry. That was too quick of a segue because I super feel the same way. It's nice that we've kind of created this beautiful friendship as well as creating these amazing stories and games.
And as someone from the outside, it was really interesting. The difference between the two session zeros where you guys spent most of your time figuring out how you guys were all interconnected and like how the like dynamic and like how you all met and the kind of relationships that have already been formed. Whereas because Halcyon Days have met and like were aware of each other's existence to a certain degree, like came together as a group in the first session, we built out the people around them instead. Like it's been really interesting for me looking at the two different campaigns and like how they're both very Edge of the Empire, right? Like they're both very much like Edge of the Empire campaigns, but they're so different and still moving along this kind of shared track. It's been really, really cool.
Awesome. Well,
So,
I was just because I think it's silly and fun, and
I love silly.
So we
Same.
talked a little bit about like what mechanic, I guess, earlier was sort of like so for me, I have to say the most enjoyable for me so far has been absolutely when our good friend One Crit Wonder has sort of created the canon that like pretty much anytime 3 threat are rolled, somebody's gonna fall on their butt. The fact that he like falling prone has become such a like quintessential
ubiquitous
element of ubiquitous element of our games is super fun and funny to me, and at the same time it's like it's that fun thing that doesn't happen in any other games that I know of, and it's strictly because of the way the system is set and the way the dice work. Similarly, I think one of the cool things too with that, in a parallel to that, is like how the crits work, where either a triumph or enough advantage will then render you into a situation where you can choose to make a critical hit. Is super. I mean, that's just like, whoa, what a cool, fun thing to throw into the mix at the correct moment.
Yeah.
And then you fall into beer and
Shout out to our favorite beer-soaked mechanic.
it was awesome.
Yeah. We're not sorry, Seal, in chat. Okay, so I've heard Gregory's voice do a couple of cracks, and I know that I'm not doing the best. So let's make this our last question.
What favorite color?
Yeah, I was going to say favorite lightsaber color.
Ooh.
Thanks. Shout out, by the way, to Friendly UAV for all the great questions in chat. You rock. Yeah, favorite lightsaber color. Or actually, addendum. What is your favorite, but also which color do you think you would have in real life? Like you, Rob, and Gregory, and Niffer.
So this is funny. So this is something that should probably be addressed in future table talks, because this ties into lore and like the greater Star Wars universe and stuff. Like, not a lot of people know what the differences are between the colors, like what they represent and why different Jedi or Sith. Well, see, the Sith are all red, right? So we know that the Sith are all red. We haven't seen any different. There is possibly the potential of some Sith using like black or one of the other super rare ones, but generally speaking, it's pretty accepted that all Sith use red. However, Jedi tend to have a different color, and it has a lot to do with their connection to the Force entirely. So like, Luke is an interesting character because he's used both. He used his father's, which was blue. When he made his own, it was green.
Okay, but from a meta perspective, that's legitimately only because green shows up better against the Tatooine sky.
Fair. But
trivia.
Well, that's sure. That's good stuff. All right, so that being said, I don't want to answer first. I got to think about it.
All right, well, I was going to go straight for the deep dive lore then. I would do green because it's much more of a connection to the living force is what the green translates to, I guess.
Totally.
Of like being fully present and in the situation that you're in, and like much more treating the force as like an ally and a coworker and a partner and stuff. And so like that's what I feel like I would be a lot better at, would be like, okay, I'm in this situation and I'm gonna like be present and fully aware and stuff. So like I like green for that reason. That's like what I personally would have. Although I do love some Samuel Jackson. I like purple. It's my favorite color. So give me a purple lightsaber. So,
Right.
Purple lightsaber.
and then the like lore that built around it. And listen, this is not a criticism. I love this about Star Wars War. It all is sometimes feels like, oh, there's that thing that was in that one shot of Star Wars. We should figure out why that's a thing. You know, and I love that because that's also a lot of times how I build out my worlds of like,
it's true.
I say something offhand and then that becomes a fact, and like, oh, I should figure out why I said that. I guess since I spoke up, I'll go next. I am not the most knowledgeable about Star Wars lore. I will have to say, in terms of like look and feel, yellow lightsabers are my jam. They're really cool, especially since they're usually like double bladed and they're like cool Jedi weapons that are like passed down. Like you don't make a yellow blade lightsaber, like double blade yellow lightsaber. You like earn it or like get handed it down, which is really cool. And I know, okay, so this is like the very limit edges of my Star Wars or so, but to my knowledge, it's like basically more about like people who would do like espionage or like protection and stuff like that, like guardians more so. So that'll be my pick, I guess. Just like people who are like, you know what, like the Force is cool and all these things are cool, but also we gotta keep people safe and like know things.
Epic.
Keep people safe and know things. What a good description.
Nope. Yeah, so I'm kind of with Nif on this too, is that like I probably would end up using a green for the same reason of feeling like connected to the living Force. You know, being, you know, a meditator for a long time and this kind of thing. That's definitely, and I love nature. So for me, that feels correct. That being said, I love the blue. I mean, blue is like my favorite color too. So like one of the midnight blue ones would just really. Ooh, and you know, so we should probably at some point mention that we also are going to be streaming the video game Star Wars: The Old Republic. So we're not just doing the RPG together, we're also starting like getting more involved in playing the Star Wars video game, The Old Republic, and there's some really fun stuff you can do in there with the color crystals. So like changing how pure the blade is, or if it's like wavy and that. And, oh god, there's all kinds.
I had no idea about that. Now I'm so excited.
Yeah, there's some real on Pinterest. There are some super cool ones. So it's like it's been a while since I looked through some of that stuff and read through. Like you said, the yellow one. I think you're absolutely right. Is about like protection and defense, and then more subtle things. If I remember correct, I think you're right on the money with that.
I'm sure. Alex at the Shock the Link has got. Like like a vein of all the things I got wrong or anything.
No. Yeah. Such a cool question. That's going to be another one. So anyone who comes on for the first time is definitely going to have to answer this question.
Yeah.
I'm putting kind of like a bunch of starter conversation of like, what's the correct viewing order? What's your first interaction? And what would be your lightsaber? I think everybody needs to answer those at some point.
Epic.
Love it.
All right. But for now, it's been an hour, and we are all slowly dying on the inside or outside, whichever you prefer. So, yeah, I think we're going to call it a night. I don't know if now's the time that we have to establish a cool sign-off and stuff. So, how do we sign off, guys?
Well, we should say thank you for joining us for Tabletop.
Oh,
Galaxy,
yes, it's true.
Our first
Thank you for joining us.
Talk show.
Tabletop Galaxy, our first talk show.
Nif, you're awesome. Thank you for spearheading.
I'm very excited to have this. Like, I really like
host.
behind the scenes stuff. Like, that's always been where my heart's at, is like the production
like
side and like
things.
learning the details and knowing everything. I need to know everything. But yeah, so our next shows are Tuesday with Halcyon Days, and then this Wednesday is Second Sunrise. And yeah, so
one thing I will say as a reminder, so if you are catching this after the fact or you're just watching now and you're like, man, I just thought of a really great question, or I want to know this, hit us up on Twitter or Discord, or just find Niffer on the street and yell at her and just send in those questions so we can talk about it on the next
Yes.
Tabletop Galaxy.
I love questions.
Love to. I mean, thank you everyone who was putting questions in the chat. So feel free, like whenever we're doing these live or just whenever you have a question, hit us up. We'd love to talk about it.
Yep. So at Tabletop Galaxy or at Nifferniff.
Sweet.
Yeah. Anything else?
I promise if I'm on, or when I'm on again, I will remember to wear a Star Wars shirt.
I mean, I'm wearing just a flannel.
No, I know.
So I
but
think you're good.
I've been doing it for all of our games, and I just wanted to like stay consistent, and I didn't. Yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, I just wanted.
Well, now you have to consistently wear not Star Wars shirts for TableTalk.
You got me. Now that might be true. Hey, you all are awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me tonight.
Thank you guys for coming on and being the very energetic guest while I am very, very tired. Yeah. So thanks everyone in chat for coming to watch and for asking questions. You all are awesome. Have a good night, Space Fam, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.